Oftentimes you can get really close to your customer's logo simply by wireframe editing lettering segments that you already have. So you can find an alphabet that's really close to matching their typeface, and then you can modify it by wireframe editing and just extending certain serifs certain ways and matching their typeface a little bit better. Let's take a look at how to do that. So I have a logo on screen right now. It's pretty close to my customer's logo, except in my customer's logo their R would swoop down under the other letters a little bit more, and it would also come off to the side a little bit. So I'm really close. I just need to edit my lettering a little bit. Let me zoom in here and look at how to do some of that. If I select my lettering segment, let me take this out of 3D so it's a little easier to see. I get the X's on each handle. Those X's are the handles for the letter. If I want to wireframe edit, I've got a couple of options. One, I could convert it to wireframe. That's going to break it apart into all the pieces that make it up. That's a little problematic sometimes because I can no longer change the spelling of it, and it's a level dependent feature. I may not have the ability to do that. What I can do, however, is select the letter that I want to edit and either right click and go to wireframe editing, or I could click on the wireframe editing icon on my toolbar. Once I do that, I have access to the wireframe elements that make up this letter. Now, it's not breaking it apart. It's still a letter, but I can start to edit the shape. So using some of those wireframe editing techniques, I can select this element. I'm going to hold Control to click on another wireframe point. So now I've got both of these endpoints selected, and I can move these over here. I'm going to click inside this box to deselect the point, but keep the letter and my wireframe editing mode selected. And I'm going to drag this up a little bit to come a little bit more to a point. And now I really want to curve this out and change this angle to a curve. I'm going to do that a couple of different ways. One, I'm going to click on this point, right click on it, go to properties, and I can change that from a straight point to a curve point. Hit OK. I've got a big curve coming down here. The other way to do that would be to hold Shift and click on this point. And now I have a curve swooping down all the way under, and I can click on this point. I'm going to hold Control as I drag it, but I'm going to make this curve come in just a little bit to narrow that up just a touch. So now I've got this swoop coming all the way down. If I wanted to add to this letter, I could do that as well. Let me click on the handle of that letter. And now that's selected, the resize edit box goes down to just that letter. I'm going to click on wireframe editing again. And now I'm going to bring this down. Now I can't add to the end of it, but what I can do is I can insert points inside the form. So I'm going to come in just a little bit and I'm going to left click. Now when I did this, it added to both sides. These letters are digitized using a column 1, and whatever I do to one side will happen to the other. Column 1 works in pairs of points. If it was digitized using a column 2, I could click on one side and then click on the other to achieve the same effect. So I've got a set of points. Let's see if we can move that tail the other direction. So now I've got this end point selected just by clicking on it. Hold Control, click on this one, and I'm going to drag this down over here. This is going to look really funny here for a minute. Let me click inside this box to deselect those points, bring this up to create a bit of a point. And now I really want to kind of curve this off, and to do that I need a set of curve points. Because this is a column 1, I can click one time. I'm going to right click on this line and it's going to add a pair of curve points. I'm going to then select one of these. I'm going to hold Control to have this arc out perfectly. I'm going to drag this up. As I do so, I'm changing the stitch direction. The line that goes in between these points is dictating my stitch direction, and I'm trying to aim as if it was a spoke on a bicycle wheel towards the center of that curve. Now it's going to give me a smoother sew out. I could create the same curve with something like this, but it's going to generate some really funny stitches, and it's going to bunch up. If I aim towards the center of that curve, it's going to be much better off. So now, sorry about that, now I have the flares going just the way that I want them. I could even finish this off on this side doing the same thing, selecting that D, clicking on the handle to select just that D, going to wireframe editing, inserting a pair of points just inside of here, selecting both of these, moving them down, clicking within this box to deselect, I'm just going to move this up, make a bit of a point, and then right-click to add a pair of curve points. Let's drag this up. Remember that if I don't hold Control, it keeps that Bezier handle going with it, but if I hold Control, it will arc out perfectly. Let's do this to this other side. So now I have a tail going off this way, got a tail going off this way, and I've pretty much emulated my customer's design simply by wireframe editing lettering segments of an alphabet that I already had in my system. So I'm not having to digitize from scratch, I'm just having to modify slightly an alphabet that I already have. That should give you some good ammunition for creating your customer's designs without having to digitize them from the very beginning.